Hey guys, this is Jason, and I'm going to show you how to create a super awesome audio player. It's on this video using Sound.js. And the reason you want to use that is because it's going to just work on all the different browsers. So you can see here I've got a list of songs. I'm going to play one.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mambo number 5.
And then I can play the other one. And you'll see that if I reload the page without having those audio files buffered, that it even correctly handles loading them on demand. With some cool transitions, because you've got to have cool transitions. Same thing here. And then if you were to exit the state by going back like this, you see a little transition, audio file stop, come back in, plays just like that. So I'm going to show you how to make this using Angular in the context of an Angular directive. And so let's get started. So first thing I want you to notice is that here's how this is laid out inside of the DOM. So let's head over to that. And you can see right here I've got an audio player directive added. Now right now I've only added it to the icon. And what that means is this icon right here. Eventually this whole thing is supposed to be the directive. At least that's what you'd normally want to do. And then you want to have that directive be output by like an ng repeat or some iteration, something that spits them out. But that's the idea. So right now it's just this one element, which is just what I'm calling the transport control, which is really just the play icon itself. So I've got the directive here, and I'm passing in the name of a song. Just like down here, I'm passing in the name of a song. So we've got Mambo and Life. Now on the file system, inside of assets, I've got those two MP3 files. All right, let's take a look at the directive. This is it here. So first thing we're going to do is kind of walk you through this template here. And what I've got is the element is going to be replaced by what you see, this markup right here. And all it is a div with a div inside of it. And that div inside of it is the icon. And so you can see I've got an ng click, which fires off a method, and I'm setting some classes. And really I'm just setting some classes play, pause, and loading. So 3 classes. Play, pause, and loading, and it will be play whenever the state.playing is false, hence the exclamation mark, saying whenever it is not state.playing. And you can see pause is when it's on state.playing, and loading is whenever state.loading. So heading over to the CSS, take a look at this. You can see I've got my little icon right here, which is a div. Now, ideally, you'd be using something like Font Awesome, setting the Font Awesome classes to different icons. But because those icons have varying sizes, even if you say like font size 20 pixels, different icons have different widths. So I got some ugly looking things. So what I ended up doing was kind of saying, hey, just make it 40 pixels. When it's got these classes, just go and swap out the background image. And I'll show you how I made those now. So if I open up Photoshop and I just kind of open that file that I used, here you go. So we'll just start off with, I've got a play icon, pretty simple. I've got a pause icon, also pretty simple. And then what I've done is I've kind of duplicated the play icon, deleted the triangle, and then used a kind of a special gradient, and I just applied an angle gradient to it, which kind of looks like you see here, and that turned it into that kind of circle thing. And they're all the exact same size. So as you kind of come through this and I load the page, what's happening is I'm toggling classes that are set based on scope. There you go. And the thing that spins that, if you want to see that, is I'm still using Font Awesome's spin class. So you can see right here I'm applying if a spin if state is loading. And same thing here. If state is loading, I'm also adding the loading class, and that's what makes it spin. And all that's doing is swapping out the background images like so. And then the animation that you see with it fading is right here. Transition all, 0.2 seconds ease, and then I'm just adjusting opacity to 1 from 0. So that means that as you set scope.playing equals true, the graphic changes, and that's how that works. So you can see here I'm passing in song, and if you don't know what that @ sign means, I've got a video that talks about just those symbols. But what this is saying is take the string value that's passed in. You don't need to do any kind of two-way binding, and it's not a function that you're going to fire. That's what the @ symbol is kind of saying here. So that's important because in the HTML template, I'm passing in a string into the song attribute, and that's what I'm picking up right there. All right, so let's get started. Upon initialization, what is this directive going to do? It's going to say we've got a state variable on scope that's equal to an empty object. I'm setting up just a base media path. I've got a blank variable called track, and that's it. And then what happens if you scroll down to the bottom? I'm firing off a init. Going back up, here's an init right there, and it does nothing. So that's kind of an important key thing right there. Now, we are using Sound.js, and it is a library that's probably one of the most powerful, most compatible ones. So if you take a look at Sound.js and you just kind of Google that bad boy and pull this up, this is what's being used. This is just a JavaScript library. It's not designed for Angular. It's, you can go over to the online documentation and see the class definitions and all the variable methods and how that works. But I'm going to show you how to kind of introduce this into Angular. So going back over here, here's what happens. When this directive kicks off, it's going to replace it with this template. ng-click says toggle audio. What does toggle audio do? Which is right here. It's going to say if state.playing is false, then it's going to fire off a function called play audio. Otherwise, it's going to call pause audio. So let's head over to play audio. Let's see what that does. Going over to play audio. It's going to broadcast stop all sounds along with the name of the current song that's for this directive. So if this were the Mambo directive, it would be broadcasting an event along root scope using the pub submodel and saying, just passing along this string and this payload, this value object. And this is so that all the other instances of this directive are listening and will automatically stop. This is important because as you play a song, like this one right here, and it loads, if I go to play the other song, it automatically stops, and that's what does that. So that's why you want to immediately say, hey, I'm going to play and say stop all sounds. But you can see that we're listening for stop all sounds, and we're passing in that payload. And this T right here represents the track, which I'm calling the song right here. So as we broadcast this event, passing in this data, this listens for that event and receives that data. And then what it does is it looks at that data and says, if you're not my song, and that track hasn't been actually, meaning this track hasn't been defined at all, then or making sure that it is defined, making sure that it's not undefined, then go ahead and pause the audio. Otherwise, don't bother. And the reason don't bother is because it's your song. So you don't want to pause itself. So like if Mambo comes in and it says, hey, stop all sounds, then Mambo goes, hey, I should stop all sounds. No, stop all sounds if the song that you're trying to play is not me. So that's important. That way, all the other instances of these directives will stop if something starts to play. So that's why that's important. So then coming back in here, we're saying, hey, if you don't currently have a track, if you do have a track, meaning that it is defined, meaning that it's not undefined, then we're going to just kind of say loading is false because it's already loaded. Playing is true. We're going to rewind it by saying track set position. We're going to call track.play. And you may be wondering at this point, well, where does track get instantiated? And we're going to be coming to that real soon. So we're just saying play, and we're saying what is the ID of the song to play, which is just a string identifier. So you can call it whatever you want. So that's what happens if it's already defined. And that's what happens when you initially come here and you load a file, not here, but once it's already loaded and I stop it, if I hit play right now, you'll see it instantly starts to play. And this is the part that's getting executed right here if it's already loaded. However, if it's not already loaded, we jump down over to this chunk of code right here, meaning that it is undefined. And then we say loading is true, playing is false, because it's got to start loading first. So then we're going to call create.create.js, which is created on the window object by that library. And we're first going to remove all event listeners. And this is important because you don't want things to start doubling up on themselves. And so we're saying, because this is created on the window object, you want to make sure that nothing else is listening for this particular event at this point. Just wipe them all out because we're going to start fresh. Then we're going to say register sound. And what this is doing, and this is all in the documentation, but it's basically actually doing the loading. It's saying, here's the actual song name, here's the MP3, append the audio path before the song name, and the audio path was specified up here, right there. This 1 is the number of channels. In this case, it doesn't really matter in the context of a directive, so I just set it to 1, but any number there would work. Then I'm saying true, which is saying start loading now. And that's what that's doing. Then I'm creating an event listener for the file loaded event, and as soon as that fires off, as soon as that event is heard, then we're going to fire off this function called handle loaded. Handle loaded is right here. Here's where track gets assigned, and it's actually getting an instance of sound right here. It's creating an instance for that song, that string identifier. We're setting our scope variables right there. Loading is no longer false because it's been loaded, because this is what fires after it's loaded. Then we're saying playing is now true, and then we're actually making it play. Then we're calling scope.apply so that these scope changes are actually reflected in the DOM. Firing off on Angular's digest cycle. So that's actually what does the playing there. So rewinding back to where we kind of started, that was play audio. Pause audio works very similarly, and we're saying that as long as there's a track, then go ahead and pause it. Otherwise, it doesn't apply. So that is, in a nutshell, how this directive works. In the main run block, what you're seeing here is that when we do a state change success, which is an event that's fired from UI router, then we're going to just remove all sounds. And that's going to wipe out all instances and just kind of turn off everything, clean up everything, and do that. We have to put it in a try statement because for whatever reason, this method fires an error if there is no registered sound. But that's what makes it work.